Good morning, Crawford, and happy Mother's Day. On the count of three, we will welcome our live stream with a happy Mother's Day live stream. So 1, 2, 3. Happy Mother's Day live stream. So whether you are here in person or virtually, we're glad to have you with us today. We have a special guest with us today whose performance will be most of our worship time this morning, so we're not going to have announcements and joys and concerns and those kinds of things. We do have childcare provided for children under 5 downstairs, and I'm just delighted to be able to welcome our special guest this morning. When I got an announcement just, kind of over the transom through my email that Olivia Woodford of Bible Women Speak had this performance and multiple kinds of performances, and one of them was especially related to Lent, and that's when I got it, and we got in touch to see if she could come up for Lent. She's living now in North Carolina, and that didn't work out, and then I looked at the other kinds of things that she offered and saw that there was a performance called Mother of Nations about Sarah and Hagar and their relationship. And I thought, that would fit on Mother's Day. I said, well, you want to do Mother's Day? And she said, well, yeah, I guess I could. And so if there's anything specific to that performance that she wants to share, I'll let her do that when she comes up. But I want to introduce her and read her bio. Obviously, the choir has the day off. Helena has the morning off. And thank you to James for giving us a prelude and postlude. There are going to be, Olivia has CDs, and those will be for sale in Gifford Hall. So let me, without ado, introduce Olivia Woodford, who has a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Theater from Boston University. She's a theater artist and founder of Healing Theater. She's performed off-Broadway and in regional theater, and has taught theater in public and private schools to people of all ages. Since 1992, she has performed the 4 Women of the Bible plays, which are now 6, that she created to churches and schools of all denominations throughout the country, New Zealand, and Canada. She provides day-long and weekend retreats on women of the Gospels that include the historic and cultural context of Jesus' time. Olivia is an artist dedicated to bringing the sacred into people's lives, and I am very grateful that she is bringing the sacred into our lives this morning. Will you welcome Olivia Woodford?
Good morning. So I'm going to give you just a little background on this play. Oftentimes people will ask me if I will do a play on Ruth or if I'll do a play on Esther. And I say, no, I just work with the women of the Gospels. So, and that was until it was about 8 years ago. A church called me and they said, we want you to do a play on Sarah and Hagar. And like I said to everyone else, I'm sorry, I don't do the Old Testament. You can find somebody else. And then they said to me, well, we think you'd be perfect. We're doing a conference and bringing together Muslim and Christian women. And this piqued my interest. And so that's what inspired me to sit down. I think the other thing that inspired me is I'd just gotten back from Jerusalem. I'd been in Israel. And to feel the tension between the traditions, it's like you could cut it with a knife. And, it all goes back to these 2 women. 4,000 years of the animosity between these 2 women and the misunderstandings. And so I thought this was worthy of a play. So. All right. Well, I'm going to get a little louder. So, yeah, I have a mic. Is it on? All right. Oh, my God. Okay. All right. That's a little much. You all like that? All right. I will get used to it then. Okay. So this is a play in 3 parts. Part 1. The roles we play in God's plan. I am Sarai. God named me Sarah. Born of a noble family in the great city of Ur, I was gifted with a rare and radiant beauty that attracted benefits and trouble. As wife of Abram, who became Abraham, I would travel far from my home along the great river, from all I knew, the people and the comforts, to serve the God of Abraham. I gave birth to a son named Isaac and became the mother of nations. I am Hagar, who became known as Hagar. Born of a royal family of Egypt, I was born with a rare and radiant beauty that attracted benefits and trouble. As second wife of Abraham, if we tell the truth, you belong to me, and lived as I wished. Your position was elevated at my word and removed at my word. I have been asked to tell my story. You will tell yours. I ask you not to interrupt when I am speaking. And if we tell the truth, I belong to God. I gave him my life, my faith, and my life rose and fell according to his word, not yours. Now, where was I? Yes, I was second wife of Abraham. I would travel far from my home in Egypt, far from the great river, from all I knew, the people and the comforts, to serve the God of Abraham. I gave birth to a son named Ishmael and became the mother of nations. You compare yourself to me. I am here to tell my story as I lived it. Any similarities between you and me is merely coincidence. I see you for who you are, a usurper with no respect for tradition or the welfare of the people who sheltered you. Though you tried, there was no way you could replace me. I lived my life at Abraham's side. We were even raised together in the same household as children. The arrangement of our marriage preserved the bloodline and consolidated our family's holdings. One might say it was a match made in heaven. Abraham was a man of strong character, great fortitude, and steadfast faith. My beauty and devotion to my husband was well known. We were respected and admired amongst the noble families of Ur. What neither of us knew as we embarked on our life together was that I would prove barren, unable to provide him an heir, and he would be called by his God to travel a great distance from the only life we knew. We'd been married decades when Abram came to me one day out of breath, his face bright with wonder. God had just spoken to him. Word for word, he repeated the words of the Almighty One. Go forth from your native land and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you. All the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you. I trembled with awe and wonder at the vision and the marvelous words. Even more marvelous was that the one most high had chosen my husband. All families of the earth shall bless themselves by him. Abram was a man of high standing, but now both of us were called to something much greater. The mighty blessing came with a sacrifice. We had to leave the life we'd built. We didn't question the directive, but I cried all the same as grew smaller and smaller, disappearing in our wake. I was 65 when we headed out into the desert with our father Tehran, our nephew Lot, along with a caravan of animals, servants, and all we owned. The hardships were bearable because as we met each one, we came closer to fulfilling God's promise. Years passed before we arrived in the lands of Canaan. Then God spoke again to Abraham, reinforcing his promise that this land would forever belong to our progeny. My heart leapt to hear the promise of children voiced one more time. But there had been no rain in this land for some time, so until the drought subsided, we traveled on to Egypt. When we arrived in Egypt, Abraham said to me, "You are a beautiful woman. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'She is his wife,' and then they will kill me, but let you live. Say then that you are my sister, that all may go well with me because of you, and that I may remain alive thanks to you." Beauty was a measure of wealth and visible for all to see. My family line and physical attributes had been an asset to Abraham up until then. In each land, men traded women like camels or cloths, and Abraham was in need of a good trade. Please do not think ill of Abraham or me. It was a different time. The Egyptians did take note of my presence. I drew the attention of Pharaoh, who soon wanted me as his own. He offered livestock and riches in exchange for the sister of Abraham. And so you became second wife. I was Abraham. I served him faithfully. You asked me not to interrupt your story. Please extend me the same courtesy. It's just that you are rather long-winded. Such impatience. I lived with Abraham 70 years before you ever came into the story. 70 years. I'm telling 70 years in roughly 70 seconds. Okay, where was I? Whew. I went to live in Pharaoh's palace and tasted and enjoyed the full measure of the comforts and splendor of what Egypt offered. Certainly more than a daughter of could ever have dreamt. Please temper your impudence. You will enter the story soon, and that's when everything turns sour. There was hardships, but never misery until she entered our lives. You created your own misery by playing me as a pawn. Quiet, please, I will finish. Okay, I am weary of being painted as the villain in this story. You can see how she looks to diminish me, take my place, put words in my mouth. If I had a fault, it was that I underestimated the lengths she would go to disregard custom and put our tribe and way of life at risk to serve her inclinations. All right, where was I? Oh, yes, I'm in Egypt. Abraham's wealth and position increased living along the Nile, but Pharaoh's household did not fare as well. His family and servants were plagued by one disease after another. Upon discovering that the plagues were the result of the bargain he'd made to possess me, he summoned Abraham. Not daring to even look in my direction, he briskly waved his hand, dismissing me from his sight. No longer an object of beauty, I was now seen only as the carrier of disease. Towards Abraham, Pharaoh was simultaneously angry and conciliatory. Why did you say, "She is my sister," so that I took her for my wife? Now here is your wife. Take her and be gone. Believing the God of Abraham was punishing him for taking possession of me, Pharaoh desired to appease the God he had angered. The God that protected Abraham had sent plagues upon his family. Pharaoh gifted Abraham sheep and cattle, male and female donkeys, even camels, and slaves. He also gifted Abraham slaves. Well, of course, that was part of the custom, the culture. Why are you looking to inflame these people's minds who live in different times? It was understood we would need added servants to help care and maintain for all that we had acquired. And this is where I come in. It's where you enter the story, but as yet have no story. My story begins before the place you have asserted me in your story. Pharaoh was a man of great honor and was horrified that he had acted with notable disrespect. The deception was Abraham and his wife's. But he felt in the eyes of God this made no difference. As the first wife of Abraham plainly said, Pharaoh gifted the best of what he had to appease the God of Abraham. In Pharaoh's mind, he had taken something precious, belonging to a mighty and foreign God. Because Abraham's wife was so beautiful, he figured this God appreciated beauty. As I was the most beautiful of his many daughters, he offered me as part of the retribution. This was not a moment Pharaoh could afford to be possessive or hold something back. Bargaining with gods was a tricky business. Pharaoh was also a shrewd man and figured strategically that the gift of me would support an alliance with Abraham, who was a powerful man with the powerful protection of a god. And Pharaoh always looked to establish alliances with the placement of his daughters. To be clear, all servants and slaves came under my domain. I managed and had dominion over all household matters. Hagar was young, refined, and beautiful. She was a welcome gift. I recognized her value and assigned her to be a handmaiden, not a slave. Little did I know that Pharaoh, perhaps unwittingly, had unleashed a plague of sorts on me and mine. Now who is inflaming the minds of the audience? I went where directed, wishing to do honor to Pharaoh and Egypt, and to serve the God of Abraham, who provided the protection and well-being for your people. Oh, if that had only been true, it would have saved so much heartache. When we finally returned to Canaan, we had amassed significant wealth, and Abraham's reputation was strengthened through trade and blessing of God. In fact, we had too much. The herds of both Lot and Abraham's households did not have enough pasture for grazing, and quarreling broke out amongst the herdsmen. Lot agreed to separate and move his household, and chose to settle in the Jordan Valley. Not long after Lot left, Abraham came to my tent, his eyes aglow. I knew God had spoken to him again. He motioned me outside, and with a sweep of his arms, he repeated the words God had spoken. Look out from where you are, to the north, to the south, to the east, to the west, for I give all the land that you see to you and your offspring for all time. And I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth. So if one could count the dust of the earth, then your offspring too can be counted. Gazing far in every direction, taking the immense expanse of the land, I wanted to feel the satisfaction Abraham was feeling at the fulfillment of what God had promised. But all I could think was, where will this offspring come from? We had no children. I had not fulfilled the role I am to play. My menses stopped long ago, and now I'm old. We needed to travel for years to reach this land given to us. Perhaps something else needs to be done for a son to be given. There's a law among our people that I had not wanted to invoke, fully believing that God and my womb would perform the miracle needed. Perhaps my desire to carry and give birth to the heir kept me from enacting my lawful right as a legal wife to select a woman amongst my servants to act as a surrogate, to give birth to the child that would then become my son to raise. At this juncture, as I lay near Abraham in our tent that night, I reminded him of the law and my expressed wish to have him impregnate one of the slaves. He nodded with the reasonableness of the proposal and left it to me to make the arrangements. I had already selected the one servant most worthy of this great honor. She was of noble birth, with an ancestry worthy of being Abraham's heir. The child she would carry would also receive a measure of her beauty and regal bearing. With the best of intentions, I raised a tent for Hagar to have for herself, filled it with many comforts. I gifted her scarves and gowns, and remained alone in my tent while Abraham visited hers. Those were sleepless nights. But I did not let on about the hardship of this sacrifice. It was not long before my efforts were rewarded and Hagar became pregnant. At first, I rejoiced. I would have a child to raise and Abraham would have an heir. But Hagar spoiled it. She forgot her place and what had been given her. She wanted more. She forgot who had granted her her new role. She began leveraging her newfound status, playing on Abraham's affections, determined to push me aside. When I became pregnant with Abraham's child, I felt indescribable happiness. The miracle of life was growing inside me. I wondered at my own body, at all the new sensations. I marveled at the joy of becoming a mother. This great prophet and man of God sobbed with the news of a baby. He had been able to achieve so much, but not the one thing he wanted most. The thing that had been out of reach. The one thing I could give him. A son. Stop. It was not your child. It was mine. I was the one giving him a child, and your insolence to publicly incite Abraham. My belly said otherwise. We are from different cultures. What do I know of your laws? As second wife, it was my obligation to please my husband, to draw out his tender side, to look to his needs, to draw forth his praise. It is not a crime to wish to be favored in my husband's eyes. All Pharaoh's second wives have done the same. What irked you is that his eyes would follow me and not you across the room. And as the child grew in my belly, his looks of tenderness were for me, not you. What irked me is that you forgot your position. You forgot you were in the service to me, not Abraham. You were to provide me a son, not him. It was me you needed to please, and it was my tears of joy that should have touched you. Instead, you flaunted your new position and expected me to move and bend for you. That was not to be tolerated. No one was ever allowed to forget who ruled your household. I always sought to follow your wishes. It is true, I suddenly felt something new, a rightness within me, a rightness to my own life. It was right for me to desire, to want, to love. What you could not tolerate was that I, not you, was giving him a child. I went to Abraham to rectify the issue. He had inadvertently encouraged her misguided perceptions. You are responsible for the wrong I'm suffering, I said to him. He did not deny it. I understood he could not control the nature of his affections, but he had wrongly given false hope to this surrogate who did not respect her status. I said, I put my slave in your arms, and now that she knows she is pregnant, she despises me. May God judge between you and me. As household matters had always been my domain, Abraham simply said, your slave is in your hands. Do with her whatever you think best. He did not call you wife. He did not lay claim to you. He did not assert that your position be elevated or mine diminished. I was justified. And so, I moved to enact the law and custom that dictated the abolishment of her new position, a position she had abused. While I had initially made her a handmaid, she was now demoted to slave. Removed from the tent I extended her, she was placed in the slave's quarters, assigned the harder tasks, and given the leftovers for meals, the same as any slave. This is what she brought on herself. The desert is no place for mutiny or for asserting a well-being of all. Everyone must know their place for the survival of the tribe. You treated me so harshly, so full of spite, making me a slave, the mother of Abraham's child, addressed as a slave. I could not take it. Perhaps because I was pregnant, I found myself crying at all times of the day. My pregnancy had made me more sensitive, more emotional. You would have thought this would have evoked empathy from another woman, but no. My tears, any sign of humanness from me was reprimanded. I was being punished for feeling, for being pregnant, for being foreign, for existing at all. Her treatment of me was inhumane. Death became preferable, anything but to be under her yoke. So I ran. I had not thought it through. All I knew was that I needed to get away from her. I thought, The desert could be no harsher than the first wife of Abraham. I had no plan of where to go. I just went. I was not more than a couple days in the desert, and I'd not come upon any homestead or oasis, and I thought, I've only run to my death. I came to a spring just off the road of shore, and I gave into my fatigue. Exposed to the elements, I felt foolish, desperate, but I was resolved. I would rather die than subjugate myself to the malice of my mistress. I resorted to prayer. Prayer was all I had left. While I was willing to die, I prayed that this child I carried live, that this child of Abraham find his way into the world. And suddenly, a voice came from nowhere and everywhere, from the sky itself. It filled my ears and resonated through my whole being. An angel of God was addressing me. Startled from my prayer, my whole body froze with excitement and fear. Would God, Abraham's God, now punish me for my disobedience? But as I was proud and strong, I brushed away my tears and readied myself to receive what this angel had to say. Looking up for the first time, I was nearly blinded by the brilliance of this figure, dressed in light, a brilliant, luminous, fearsome light. Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come, and where are you going? I was being called out. Was this a trick question? Certainly God knew the answers to these questions better than I did. Identifying me as slave only reinforced the first wife's ranking of me, also meaning I had no right to leave Abraham's tribe without her permission. Facing the brilliant, awesome power of this vision, I feared being consumed by the flame of its light. To survive, I knew I could not try to hide. Honesty was the only device I could use with the one who sees all. Perhaps the angel would reveal where I am heading. Only the truth would support and further my cause. I am running away from my mistress Sarai, I answered. My lungs collapsed, and I fought for breath as I heard the angel's next words. Go back to your mistress and submit to her. Was my mistress so right and I so wrong? Did I really have no rights? I was hers to command, and God had come to tell me this. I would do the God's will if I could only understand why. Why? Then, to my amazement, the angel said, I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count. You will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael. For the Lord has heard of your misery. The God of Abraham has heard me. He was bestowing on me a blessing. A slave, a foreigner, a woman. In my amazement, I declared, you are the God who sees me. I have now seen the one who has seen me. In this moment of revelation and vision, the walls I'd built around my heart crumbled, and my eyes became clear. I was seeing God, seeing myself as He sees me, seeing life in a way I never imagined. Overcome with the immensity of this moment, I sat there long after the angel and the voice had departed, wondering, have I really seen God? And will I live to talk about it? I drank in the air that still held the divine presence. Breathing in the fullness of what I had been given, my very soul, once shriveled from neglect, had just been fed from an eternal spring. I was coming alive as never before. I was awakened. There was a well, only a few paces away. The presence of this well marked the place of this historic moment. I named the well, Ber Lahara, the well of the living one who sees me. I made my way back to the camp, to the mistress who commanded me. In the eyes of the world, I belonged to her. But I had changed. Within myself, I now knew I belonged to God. And while I was a slave in the eyes of the people, I knew I was beloved by the living one who sees me. Knowing this in my heart and every cell of my being, I knew that no matter how she treated me or what she demanded of me, she could not diminish me again. My allegiance was to God, and it would be His directives I would serve as long as I had breath. Her hasty departure disrupted the entire household. Work was not getting done. Servants were distracted. She says I was harsh on her, but I'd only interacted with her within the dictates of her role. She had not been kept on a short leash. Otherwise, she would not have been able to run. She abused whatever privileges were granted her, and this had a rippling effect on everyone. Over 1,000 were sheltered under Abraham's tent. In the desert, to survive and hope for any semblance of comfort, we acted and moved together according to our roles. She needed to know the world did not revolve around her. We each had our roles to fulfill in order for all to run smoothly. She needed to learn this. I would not claim the son she would bear. She had made it all too clear it was her son, not mine. And so while he would be a son of Abraham, he would be the son of a slave and would be treated as such. Periodically, God came and spoke to Abraham. Each time, his message reinforced the promise of this land to the generations of children that would come from our offspring. And we were reassured that we were living in accordance with his will. As I neared my 80th year, all that God had promised had come true, save the birth of a son. My faith remained steadfast. I did not doubt his promise, nor had I given up hope. But it was a promise I'd heard for decades. If God was going to keep it, it was beyond my grasp how this would happen. So day by day, I did the one thing I could do. I placed my hopes, prayers, and life in the hands of God. Part 2. The birth of nations. Life in Hebron was good, and time passed absorbed in daily living. One afternoon, unexpectedly, 3 travelers appeared in our camp. Abraham greeted them, offered them water, and left them resting under the great oak of Mamre. He then came into our tent, and from the look on his face, I knew these travelers were angels sent from God. Without words, I knew a holy missive was forthcoming, and my role required that we provide impeccable hospitality. But Abraham, perhaps because he was excited and nervous, began issuing commands and giving directions to the servants. He instructed me to bake bread and which flour I was to use. He hurried off to select a calf from the herd that would be the honored meal. There was no time to argue or rebuke him. His decisions were sound, and I set to work. As I prepared the meal, I imagined the glow, the divinity, the countenance of these messengers. How I longed to see for myself what Abraham saw during these visitations. Abraham had immediately recognized the visitors as angels. What did he recognize? I handed Abraham platters filled with the finest meal we could offer, milk, curds, and calf meat. With my task done, I had nothing to do but wait. I sat myself near the edge of the tent. Surely I could at least listen. My heart skipped a beat when I heard an angel say my name, Sarah. They knew my name. They asked about me. Abraham told them I was in the tent. Oh, how beautiful to hear them say my name. Oh, I felt elevated, known. God knows and calls me by name. So glorious. And they knew exactly where I was, in the tent. Then the messenger said, I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son. What had they said? Had I heard them clearly? I wouldn't give him a son. I would have a son. And for the first time, God had said, when? In 1 year. How many times over the decades had God promised us a child? And now is the time. I couldn't help but laugh, so incredulous. The mysterious ways of God. After I am worn and now old, I will be granted this pleasure. I was shocked, pleased, bewildered, overwhelmed. So many feelings that spilled out into laughter. Then I heard one angel say, why did Sarah laugh and say, will I really have a child now that I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son. Oh, was I speaking out loud? I didn't even know. So many feelings. Once the messengers left, I couldn't wait until Abraham returned to the tent so we could share this moment that had been promised and was now miraculously happening. But he came storming into the tent angry. Why did you laugh? It was not a question, but an accusation. All the efforts to welcome and honor these guests, and he was ashamed that I had not demonstrated the utmost reverence. What could I say? I was stunned. Still trying to grasp the news. I'd done nothing wrong. I did not laugh, I said, wanting to deflect his anger. He said, and stormed out of the tent. Yes, it was laughter, but there are different types of laughter. I didn't laugh as he thought I laughed, as the messenger said I laughed. Did I laugh at God? Perhaps I did not understand why God, so almighty and all-powerful, would wait until I was in my 80s to give me this boon when he could have given it to me at any time. My laughter was truly the mix of so many emotions in response to hearing God's voice, my name spoken, and the prayer of a lifetime answered. How could my response be interpreted as rude? It was simply my way of trying to absorb the enormity of the message. In the following days and months, I found myself laughing. Spontaneously and often. The wonder of life, the mystery of God. The God of Abraham knew my name and where to find me. I would at last provide Abraham with an heir. Well, I felt richer. I felt more alive. And with this came laughter. And so I named my son Isaac, which means laughter. God had brought me laughter. And everyone who hears about this will laugh with me. Not everyone. That's when all the laughter left my life. This is true. True enough. I quickly saw that our sons could not be raised together. At the feast celebrating Isaac's circumcision, her son was disrespectful and mocking. She held her son as the father of nations, and her understanding of her role as second wife was not in keeping with the role assigned her. I foresaw years of misery for the entire tribe if she remained with us. She had poisoned her son with words and dreams about his place in our tribe. God's covenant was for Isaac, not her son. She and her son were under illusions it would be otherwise. I enacted my right as wife of Abraham accorded me by law. I told Abraham, send this slave and her son away. The son of this woman must not get any part of your wealth, which my son Isaac should inherit. I no longer laid claim to her son, but he was Abraham's. So the decision was also Abraham's. It weighed on him, and he spoke with God about it. Abraham, as he had always done, told me what God said. Do not be so distressed about the boy and your slave woman. Listen to whatever Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. God told him to do just as I said. He confirmed that I knew what was best for the well-being of our people. Your confidence in your position is perhaps the source of your greatest strength and also your greatest weakness. You used your position to justify and excuse your callousness. We survived many years in the desert because of my strength. And I was never one to shy away from a difficult decision. The decision gave you your freedom. Did you ever think to acknowledge that with this act you were no longer a slave? No longer in servitude to me and our tribe? Your fate was now yours, and yours alone. And if I was callous in any way, you might ask what you did to inspire this. I did as you bid. I had sex with your husband. I provided him an heir, just as you wished. And then what? What did you do with that? Were you appreciative, grateful for what was given you, or did you want more? And more, and more after that. You were greedy, ceaselessly grabbing for what did not belong to you. I left your home with nothing. I was simply ordered to walk into the desert with my son. Abraham came and at least handed us a skin of water. But how far would that take us? There was no livestock, no coverings, no tent, nothing. You sent us to our death. She expected us to die. I'm sure of it. What kind of mother does this to another mother without any remorse, any sympathy? Leaving a mother and her young son to wander in the desert. I tried not to feel the bitterness, the spite she inspired in me. With no sense of direction, we wandered in the desert of Beersheba. When the water was gone and the relentless sun had dried the life within us, we came upon some low bushes. I placed Ishmael beneath the bushes to offer him some protection. He cried as I left him. My heart was heavy and breaking. I knew I could not watch him die. Tears streamed down my face as I walked away from him. Then I sobbed with the great injustice of it all, the great indifference to my life and the life of my son. Each tear, each drop of water that fell from me was an offering to the living one, given as prayer to remember us, to see us, to have mercy on us. And like the time once before, when almost all was lost, and all I had was my faith in the beating of a mother's heart, I was heard. A voice filled the sky and was all around. What is the matter, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation. The living one had heard and responded. The voice of his messenger fell on me like a gentle rain, and I cried all the more. I was renewed, filled with the glory and mercy of the living one who sees me. I would do as this voice commanded, this voice so mighty and compassionate. Still weak, with precious little life left in my body, I would give myself to God's will and trust his promise. Reaching Ishmael, I lifted his dying body into my arms. While I sat rocking him, a well suddenly appeared, where there'd only been dust and desert. I blinked, wondering if it was a mirage. Hopeful, I left Ishmael and made my way towards it. The well was real and held fresh, life-giving water. Oh, powerful, merciful, bountiful God, who speaks from the heavens and who provides life and new life, I thank you. I thank you with my life and the life of my son. I drank my fill of this blessed water and brought Ishmael to drink its coolness. And then I poured it over our bodies until we were sated. My dedication was rejuvenated. I vowed to unswervingly give the care and attention needed to fulfill God's promise and to never doubt again. The name of my beloved son, Ishmael, means God hears. Each time I speak his name, I remember that God hears. And as the years passed, there were many challenges, many sacrifices, but I never forgot that I had been blessed to have seen God, to have been heard by God, and that I was a vessel for God's will to flow through. I raised my son in the desert. When Abraham traveled for business, he would come stay with us. Ishmael grew up knowing his father's love and under the watchful eye of the living one. I arranged a marriage for Ishmael with a woman from my people, knowing this would create a great nation that combined the best of two great tribes. Never again did I believe myself abandoned or lost, for all had been found and claimed in the end. I died peacefully, knowing that all I had dedicated myself to would take root and flower for generations to come, and that God's favor would live in the hearts of all my progeny. Part 3, reconciliation. I am Keturah. I was born in the deserts of Canaan. My name means spice. My family were spice traders. My father would joke that I was his most precious spice. And that is what he called me, precious Keturah. I traveled from my father's tent to Abraham's. After Sarah's death, it was arranged for me to marry the great prophet and man of God. I was young. He was ancient, over 100 years old. I gave him many sons, Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Their names are not remembered, and neither am I. But in Abraham's final years, I was pleased to surround him with many sons. My sons would become fathers and grandfathers, spreading the seed of Abraham across the land. But I was not to be a mother of nations. My sons were not part of God's covenant. They inherited nothing, as the full inheritance went to Isaac. But there was no resentment. Like with Ishmael, Abraham had been generous to my sons. We understood our role and were happy to play our part. At Abraham's death, all his sons gathered to honor and bury him in the cave alongside Sarah near Mamre. Ishmael and Isaac came together for this one time. While my sons attended, it was the presence of these first two sons that drew attention and marked the sacredness of that day for all time. Blessed and guided by God in separate, parallel destinies, these two sons shared the blood of their father, shared the direct blessing of God, and the grief born from the bitter estrangement between their mothers. They set aside their differences to commemorate their father, to honor this father of a people, the father of nations, a great prophet, and man who God had loved and blessed. Perhaps I am in a unique position to speak of Hagar and Sarah, to speak of God's blessing and covenant, and the responsibility and double-edged sword that a blessing brings. I'm not sure if the God of Abraham ever knew of my existence, though I served him faithfully as I served my husband. I was honored to live close to a man to whom God entrusted much. God never spoke my name as he did for Sarah, or showed his face as he did for Hagar. God had addressed Hagar as slave and Sarah as wife. Sarah never saw or directly spoke to God as Hagar had. His voice behind the flap of a tent. One could ask who was blessed more, Sarah or Hagar? Pursuing an answer to this question could bleed a well dry. To be known and addressed by God is a mighty thing. I'm not sure how a person holds and moves with this. I was content to serve on the sidelines and not be at the center of God's attention. To be blessed directly by God is something many long for. I do not. It comes with a great burden of responsibility and requires tremendous strength and fortitude. I had met both Sarah and Hagar in my youth, both formidable women, both with an extraordinary beauty even as they aged. Both gave their lives in service to Abraham and to God. Both demonstrated unswerving faith. They were larger than life, and their very presence commanded attention. Sarah, the mistress of a tribe, by fulfilling her role, she earned her place in the history of her people. Hagar, Egyptian, foreigner, handmaid, concubine, slave, defined and redefined by those who owned her. By refusing to be defined by an assigned role, she was seen and blessed for her true self, and she earned her place in the history of her people. Exaltation comes in different forms, and I've come to understand we cannot follow another's path as a model for what is best and true for ourselves. Sarah's soul was magnified through holding great responsibility for her tribe. Hagar's soul was diminished and starved by responsibility to the laws of that same tribe. Her rebellion carried her to her destiny. Sarah recognized the tremendous spirit of Hagar and thought to elevate her, to have her serve God's purpose as she understood it. For Hagar, this was an opportunity to rise above her station, to assume power and a new position within the tribe. As I see it, it was a clash of cultures, of misunderstandings. Sarah responded as any first wife of would have done. She turned to the law as it is written in the Code of Hammurabi. It was common for the first wives to claim as their own other children their husbands sired. Codes of conduct over time became law to protect and ensure the rights of first wives. This code specified the right of the wife to select a slave to be a surrogate for a child that the wife would then raise on her own. It further stated that if this slave tried to increase her position and did not relinquish her right to mother the child, the slave would return to being a slave. If the first wife subsequently bore a son of her own, the son of the slave was to be exiled from the tribe. These were the laws that the tribes of Mesopotamia, and Babylon lived by. To ensure inheritance and to minimize stress and strife within families, violation of these codes was not to be tolerated. And all our people understood this without question. Hagar did not. Hagar was Egyptian. At Abraham's funeral, I had a vision of the seed that would fall from these two favored sons and the great family trees that would grow from them, a multitude of sons and daughters, as many as there are stars in the sky. The lack of understanding for foreign cultural norms would continue to fester for millennia. The lack of trusting that God has it all handled and human compulsion to interpret and control the outcome of God's plan would also grow. The lack of knowing that God's grace could embrace all people and not just a select few would spawn increasing fear, distrust, and an endless string of wars. God created a covenant for Isaac. The descendants of Ishmael were also under God's protection and part of his plan. Are we not all protected and part of God's plan? Are we not all God's children and children of Abraham? We may come from different tribes, but can there be tolerance and understanding between peoples? Or am I hoping and asking too much of humanity? In the desert, we have a sense of how many people one well can feed before going dry, or how much pasture the livestock need before new pasture must be found. What if we also act from knowing that all we have comes from God, that a well can appear where none existed before, that an old woman could give birth to a child, and a miracle can occur when we think all is lost. At some future time, the sons of Abraham will come to a crossroads, the Jews, the Muslims, the Christians, all seeded from Abraham. They will come to populate all the lands of the earth. They will live side by side in cities and communities. When this happens, the distrust cultivated for thousands of years will need to be reconciled for the survival of humanity. The progeny of Abraham will need to set aside their differences and the endless battle over who is firstborn or the most favored son, recognizing that God and Abraham claimed and blessed each son. They can forge a truce, similar to the truce made between brothers to honor and bury their father Abraham. Can the sons and daughters of Isaac and Ishmael come together to bury an ancient and interminable rivalry, to forge a peace between them, to honor their ancestor Abraham, to honor the different ways people are called to serve God, to honor the beautiful earth that continues to support us all, and most of all, to honor God who has made everything possible. I am no mother of nations. God has never spoken in my name or talked to me, but I have seen much, and I carry a hope for all my relations, that the children of Abraham become a family in the end. I hold them all as my family. With my dying breath, I spoke the prayer that lived in my heart. Most Holy One, if you were ever inclined to hear your humble servant Keturah, I humbly ask you now that you hear me. My prayer is not for me, but for your children. O Mighty One, I beseech you, pave a way for the paths of the diverse faiths to converge, where the descendants of Abraham's come together and recognize they've only been fighting with themselves. May they finally become brothers, not enemies, of a family that is dedicated to harmony and peace, acknowledging there are many names and ways to honor you. The family of God is diverse and marvelous. May all come to know this. Is there a clinic somewhere? Whew.